In this episode, we are going to shift from learning new material to strengthening what you already know, because understanding threat frameworks once is not the same as being able to use them under pressure. When you are studying for the GISF, it is easy to feel confident right after hearing about the cyber kill chain, the diamond model, and the pyramid of pain. The real test comes later, when someone describes a short scenario, and you have to quickly organize it in your head. That is where spaced retrieval becomes powerful. Spaced retrieval means deliberately recalling ideas after time has passed, instead of just rereading them. By using short adversary story prompts, you force your brain to rebuild the framework from memory. That rebuilding process is what turns knowledge into usable skill, especially when you are facing exam questions or real-world uncertainty. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Spaced retrieval works because memory strengthens when you struggle slightly to recall something, not when you passively review it. If you read about the cyber kill chain and then immediately see the stages listed again, you might feel like you remember them, but you are only recognizing them. Recognition is not the same as recall. Recall requires you to bring the concept back without being shown it. That small effort makes the memory more durable and easier to access later. For cybersecurity beginners, this is important because threat frameworks are thinking tools, not trivia. You do not need to recite definitions word for word. You need to be able to hear a short story about suspicious activity and quickly map it to stages, relationships, and levels of pain for the attacker. Spaced retrieval builds that mapping skill so that it becomes faster and more automatic over time. Let's begin with a simple mental prompt built around the cyber kill chain. Imagine you are told that an employee clicked a link in an email, entered their credentials on a fake page, and later there were login attempts from an unusual location. Pause mentally and ask yourself where these events sit in the kill chain progression. The email and fake page suggest delivery and exploitation of human trust. The credential entry suggests initial access through stolen credentials. The unusual login attempts suggest use of that access to gain a foothold. Now, without looking at any notes, ask yourself what the likely next step might be if the attacker succeeds. A common next move could involve internal discovery, privilege escalation, or attempts to access sensitive data. That short exercise forces you to recall the idea of stages and progression. If you can do this without hesitation, the framework is becoming part of your thinking rather than just something you once studied. Now consider a variation of that prompt. Suppose instead you are told that there is unusual outbound traffic from a server to an unfamiliar external IP address, and that traffic occurs at regular intervals. Before jumping to conclusions, try to place this into a likely stage of the kill chain. Regular outbound communication might suggest command and control, C2, after a foothold has already been established. If that is the case, then earlier stages such as initial access and execution must have occurred at some point. The retrieval exercise is not about being perfect. It is about practicing the habit of asking what must have happened before and what is likely to happen next. If you suspect C2, the next likely move might involve data staging or exfiltration. Even if you are not certain, forming that hypothesis trains your brain to anticipate instead of react. Let's bring in the diamond model for another rapid recall prompt. Imagine you are told that multiple employees in the finance department received nearly identical phishing emails that referenced a recent internal project. The emails used a lookalike domain and directed users to a login page. Instead of focusing only on the kill chain stages, try to reconstruct the 4 diamond elements from memory: adversary, victim, infrastructure, and capability. The victim element clearly includes the finance department, which suggests targeted interest. The infrastructure includes the lookalike domain hosting the fake page. The capability involves phishing and credential harvesting. The adversary element may not be fully known, but you can infer that whoever is behind it has enough knowledge of internal projects to craft convincing lures. This recall exercise trains you to think relationally. Even if you do not know the adversary's name, you can reason about their likely goals and next moves based on the other 3 elements. Now combine the kill chain and the diamond in a single retrieval prompt. Imagine that after the phishing emails, one account in finance is observed accessing internal file, shares it never used before, and shortly afterward, there is an attempt to access a sensitive database. Pause and mentally map this to both frameworks. In the kill chain, you might see initial access followed by internal discovery and lateral movement. In the diamond model, the capability now includes account misuse and possibly privilege abuse, while the victim element expands beyond a single user to shared resources. By forcing yourself to map the same short story into two frameworks, you deepen your understanding of each. You are not memorizing diagrams. You are practicing flexible thinking that can shift between stage-based analysis and relationship-based analysis. Let's shift to the pyramid of pain for another retrieval drill. Suppose you hear that a security team blocked a specific file hash associated with malicious software. Ask yourself where that sits on the pyramid. Hashes are typically near the bottom, meaning they are precise but easy for attackers to change. Next, ask yourself what level of pain that action likely caused the attacker. If the attacker can recompile or slightly modify the file, the pain is limited. Now extend the prompt. Imagine instead that the team built detection around a specific behavior pattern, such as a sequence of unusual authentication events followed by a rare process execution and outbound connections. That pattern reflects behavior rather than a single value. It sits higher on the pyramid and likely causes more disruption to the attacker because they must change how they operate, not just what file they use. By repeatedly asking yourself where something sits on the pyramid, you train your brain to prioritize higher value signals. Another useful spaced retrieval method is to deliberately leave parts of the story blank and fill them in. For example, imagine you are told that data was exfiltrated from a cloud storage location, but you are not told how the attacker got in. Based on the kill chain, you know that initial access, execution, and possibly privilege escalation must have occurred. Based on the diamond model, you know there was an adversary using some capability through some infrastructure to target a victim resource. Your task in retrieval is to name at least two plausible paths that could have led to exfiltration. This might include stolen credentials, misconfigured access controls, or abuse of a trusted integration. The point is not to guess the exact answer. The point is to practice reasoning from outcome backward to likely stages and relationships. That backward reasoning strengthens your mental flexibility, which is useful on exam questions that describe effects without fully explaining causes. Spaced retrieval also helps correct misconceptions. Many beginners assume that attacks always start with malware, but repeated recall exercises reveal that credential theft without malware is common. If you repeatedly practice mapping scenarios where no file is dropped, you reinforce the idea that techniques can vary while goals remain similar. Another misconception is that blocking one IP or domain solves the problem. When you practice pyramid-based retrieval, you remind yourself that infrastructure changes quickly, and durable detection often lives at the behavior or TTP level. By spacing these recall exercises across days or weeks, you allow your brain to revisit and refine these corrections. Over time, your mental model becomes more realistic and less simplistic, which is exactly what the GISF exam expects. You can make spaced retrieval even more effective by timing yourself. Give yourself 30 seconds to hear a short adversary story and then quickly state, in your own words, the likely kill chain stage, at least one diamond element, and the pyramid level of the primary indicator. The time pressure simulates exam conditions and prevents overthinking. At first, you might feel slow or uncertain. That discomfort is normal and even desirable. It signals that your brain is working to rebuild the pathway. With repetition, your recall speed increases, and you start to recognize patterns almost immediately. You hear about credential use after phishing and automatically think initial access leading to lateral movement risk. You hear about repeated outbound traffic and automatically think possible C2 and need to check for exfiltration. That speed comes from spaced effort, not from passive review. Another powerful variation is to reverse the direction of the prompt. Instead of being told the beginning of the story, imagine you are told the ending. For example, you learn that sensitive data was published online. Ask yourself to reconstruct the likely chain of stages that led there, from reconnaissance to exfiltration. Then, map the diamond elements at two different points in the story. what infrastructure might have been used early on, and what infrastructure might have been used for data publication. Finally, ask which parts of that story would sit low on the pyramid and which parts would sit high. This reverse reconstruction forces deeper integration of all three frameworks. You are no longer thinking of them as separate chapters. You are using them as lenses on the same event. As you continue these retrieval drills, you may notice that your answers become more nuanced. Instead of saying this is initial access, you might say this looks like credential-based initial access that bypassed malware detection. Instead of saying this is a low-level indicator, you might say this is an infrastructure-level indicator with moderate pain but low durability. That nuance is a sign of growth. You are beginning to see trade-offs rather than absolute labels. The GISF exam often rewards this kind of balanced thinking. Questions may present multiple technically correct statements, and your task is to choose the most defensible or most strategic one. Spaced retrieval prepares you for that by forcing you to compare options quickly and justify them mentally. One final element to remember is that spaced retrieval should be short and frequent, not long and exhausting. 5 minutes of rapid adversary story prompts every few days is more effective than one long session of rereading notes. The spacing allows slight forgetting, which makes the recall effort meaningful. If you never allow any forgetting, your brain never has to work hard to reconstruct the framework. That reconstruction is what strengthens neural pathways and makes recall under pressure possible. For a beginner, this method may feel unusual at first, but it aligns with how memory actually works. You are not cramming facts. You are training a way of thinking that must activate quickly when a scenario appears. By the end of this lesson, the key shift is understanding that frameworks become powerful only when you can summon them without being prompted. The cyber kill chain helps you anticipate progression, the diamond model helps you reason about relationships, and the pyramid of pain helps you prioritize durable signals. Spaced retrieval through rapid adversary story prompts ties all three together and transforms them from diagrams into reflexes. The simplest decision rule to carry forward is this. Whenever you hear or read a short threat scenario, pause, name the likely stage, identify at least one diamond element, and decide where the primary indicator sits on the pyramid before you move on.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.